Okay. So today we're going to start, we're going to get into the second half of the Industrial Revolution. And I said from the very beginning here that the Industrial Revolution was maybe the largest change, the biggest revolution that we're going to study. Um, and our book breaks it down into two halves. And I really think it's appropriate. The Industrial Revolution, 1750 to 1850-ish, we already talked about the steam engine, railroads, steamboat, factories. And that was a big deal. But this second half of the Industrial Revolution is going to create our modern world. This second half of the Industrial Revolution is going to create maybe the single most important invention ever. Ever. So, except for, like I always say, fire, right? The ability to control fire, we're going to find out that this is a moment of great change. And when we talk about new inventions of the second half of the Industrial Revolution, we're talking about our things that we still use every day. Not many of you take the train to work or on vacation, right? Not many of us take a steamboat or work in factories. But the light bulb, the ability to light up the world at night and inside, eliminating the need for candles. What a huge invention. The telephone. Yeah, the telephone, as you see down here, this rudimentary telephone, was created in this period. Radio waves, which will lead to the radio, which will lead to TV, is invented in this period. But all of them use one thing: the single greatest invention since fire, the ability to control fire, and it's electricity. The ability to create, to generate electricity, to send electricity on electric wires to different houses in different areas. Game changer. You know, I always tell the story. A few years ago, my daughters and I, my wife was at school. She was taking night classes towards her master's, and we were having dinner. It was probably 5 o'clock. It was 6 o'clock, say, on a winter evening, just like now. So it got dark nice and early, and we're sitting around the table, and I had just cooked up some whatever, and all of a sudden electricity goes out, and we look at each other, and we're like, "What are we gonna do?" Well, I know what to do. Break out the old candles, right? Light up a bunch of candles. It was fun. We enjoyed eating our dinner by candlelight. And then the reality set in after dinner that there's no TV to watch. There's no radio to listen to. My phone doesn't have that much battery life left in it. Um, what are we going to do right now? And I was like, should we get a board game? But my youngest at this point was probably 3. I mean, she can't play board games. And I kind of came to the conclusion, I was like, well, maybe we should just go to bed. And then electricity ends up coming back on, an hour later. Oh, everything is normal. Wow. Are we reliant? Am I reliant on electricity for everything I do? Just to throw it out there, another important invention, the car, is invented in this period. Okay, hold on. Electricity, the phone, and the car, all invented in the second half in the Industrial Revolution. Yeah, this is a big deal. Oh, by the way, the camera is invented right around that time between the first Industrial Revolution. This is our modern world. This is our modern life. And I've been telling you, you guys stuck with me through early humans in Egypt and Mesopotamia and farming. And now I'm going to get you to the real world. I'm going to teach you, in fact, how our world got to be the way it is today. And a lot of the old stuff isn't as real, but now we're getting to the real deal. Holyfield. Um, so, yeah, the car, um, carbureted engine running on oil. And I mentioned at one point earlier that in the 1800s, coal was king. Everything ran on coal. And this, we're going to see the beginning of oil being important. And I'm not saying that oil was the main natural resource in the 1900s, in the 20th century, in the century I was born. But it was close, maybe equal to coal, maybe more. I mean, cars run on oil. A lot of electricity, especially then, still ran on coal. Some on oil, though. Home heating was run on oil. So, yeah. So, I don't know who was more important in the 1900s. And we know now that we're trying to transition to cleaner energy that doesn't pollute. Coal and oil pollute grossly. Um, but it's going to be a while till we get there, and we have ambitious goals. But even when the rich countries get there, the poorer countries are going to take a long time. And we're talking, I doubt in your lifetime, even hundreds of years until we can completely cut that off. If we ever completely cut it off, but until we eliminate, 90% or so. I don't know. Um, okay. We also start to see our modern cities taking shape in this period. This is actually New York City. Okay. 1890 in the period we're talking about. And you can see here as we kind of peer along the edges and stuff, that the big apartments of New York are starting to take shape. We're going to find out, and you can kind of see the electrical wires. Yeah, there are lights in the city now at night. You can not only go out and take a stroll, but you can work. And you better bet that the factory owners are going to take advantage and they're going to work people at night. Um, okay, I've already gone there. So another massive change that we're going to find in this period is we begin to see a continued evolution of what we're going to call the consumer economy. People were making more stuff and more money. People could afford to buy extra stuff. And we start to see a thing going on here where people have enough money to buy extra stuff. At the same time, manufactured goods are becoming cheaper. So not only do you have a little extra money because maybe your job is giving you a little extra money, but also things are cheaper. And people are starting to have this thing that most of us have, called um, spending money, right? Money to buy things we don't need. I, for thousands of years, most people, 99%, had only enough money to pay for the food and the shelter and the clothes on their back, if they're lucky. And now we're seeing a time when not only are those three things available, but also you might have a little extra money to buy something you like. Um, and a consumer economy is taking hold. Assembly line style manufacturing is a new style of manufacturing. You can see here, this is a car assembly line, okay, from Ford, Henry Ford. And each person does a small bit. So instead of one guy or woman who does all of the work, who builds the whole car all by him or herself, now we're going to find out that there are 100 people who build one car, and each person just does the same thing over and over again, which is better because for businesses, because now you can pay these people less. You don't need to have experts who know how to build a whole car or even something small like a shoe. Instead of buying a shoe that's made to fit, I walk in, the guy's going to measure my foot. He's going to make me a shoe by himself. He's a tailor, or my clothes that I'm wearing. Instead, now, clothes and shoes are being made on factory lines. And when they come out of the factory lines, they're cheaper. So again, we're seeing a change and of course, I can pay those factory line workers less than I would pay the guy who made the whole shoe. What do we call that guy who knows how to do everything, knows how to make the whole shoe or maybe build the whole car? We call him the manager, right? That guy is the boss. He walks around to make sure you're doing your one little small thing you know how to do. It's your job to screw the seats in. That's it, all day. The car comes up, screwdriver, wrench, screw it in. All four screws for each four seats, the car moves on, right? And the next guy, maybe he does windshields, or maybe the engine, or maybe he paints. Each small step, you only have to know how to do one thing. Easier to train, you can pay these people less. Also, we begin to see department stores that pop up in cities where you can show up and kind of buy anything. Sears is the big one, and I know Sears is kind of dying out. It's a dying brand. And the Sears has this thing they call the Sears catalog, where they send you. It's almost like the Amazon, okay, of the early 1900s. They send you a magazine. I remember I used to get these. My grandma used to do this when I was really young. And we would look through the magazine and she would pick out stuff I wanted and then she would order it and it would show up in the mail. So much like Amazon. It's weird, right? And well, for us, people who actually lived and through that time period. But this is the beginning of these kind of changes that are taking place throughout society. And we're starting to see a very clear split in Europe, in the United States, across the world. There are industrial areas. There are areas that are rich, have big cities. This is where the factories are. This is where business is done. And then there are agrarian areas. And these are the farmlands. And this is where the food is made. This is where the coal is taken out of the ground, or the oil, or the trees are cut down to be used in this industrial revolution. And what we find out, and I mentioned this earlier, is that where the industrial areas are, these areas become rich. And in not only here in Europe, UK, Belgium, France, Netherlands, Germany, Western Austria, Northern Italy, New York, Philly, Boston, the big industrial cities of the Northeast. And where the farming takes place, these areas turn poor. Southern and Eastern Europe, Italy, Southern Italy, Spain, Portugal, the Balkans, Russia, the southeast part of the United States. And a global economy starts to take place because of steamships and the railroads, and countries start trading with each other, and you can move goods fast enough that they don't spoil by the time they get there. Europeans would get their beef from Argentina, coffee from Brazil, iron from Algeria and Africa, Java from Indonesia. We're really seeing now the global economy taking place. And Europe was starting to take over land that they would call colonies outside of the Americas. And they would use these colonies for the raw materials that existed in these economies. And again, the same thing takes place, but even at a larger scale, where the countries that have the industry, have colonies, are getting richer, 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 richer. And the colonies are incredibly poor. They're going to be poorer than Southern Europe or the southeast of the United States, because at least those areas are so connected. We're going to find that in these colonies, it's a whole different level of poverty and control now by a foreign country who's not only controlling you, but they're coming in, they're taking your stuff, your raw materials,